this was all part of the plan. I said at the beginning, I'm going to start recording at 5 after, right? Back me up, Andrea.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, well, cool. Do we have new people on the call? I think we have some new faces.
Nope.
All faces. Okay, well, in any case, it's crew. We pulled this together because Andrea was talking about, well, she DM'd me and Ashley about questions about building community and what we can do for that. And I said, you know what? Jump in on Friday. Let's get the everybody's idea together, or everybody's ideas in the same place. I can speak. I can't. I'm gonna start recording over again.
And
That's bad. I die.
It's a very emotional topic.
Oh, community is very close to heart. But I thought what I would do is we've invited Jason, Scott, and Mark to give short presentations on community and adoption. And then we'll kind of open it up into kind of more of an open forum where, ask your ideas, do the thing. But I guess before we kick off, Andrea, do you kind of want to introduce what you guys are trying to accomplish in community, where you guys are headed, what you're thinking about?
Sure. So I'm Andrea Keating and I'm with Trimble Transportation. And what we're looking at doing is basically mimicking the Domo community, but for our Trimble customers. So we want to set up an actual Domo instance that's for our community to go and share ideas and build content and share it with each other. And then we also plan to have a forum page, very much like the Domo community page, where they can submit ideas and ask questions and all that good stuff. So we're kind of looking for best practices or recommendations for other people who have done similar projects, so that, we're not reinventing the wheel badly.
And so when you talk about communities, though, are these all like internal within one organization, or are they separated communities that typically, wouldn't talk to each other, or like,
yep, that's exactly right.
Communities?
It's our external customers, and it would be a way for all of them to be able to share ideas. So like trucking companies, basically, like if one trucking company builds a card and they think a bunch of other people could use it, then they would be able to put it out on that community instance and other people could grab it. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah. And you're planning to use Domo everywhere, or you have Domo everywhere custom? Okay.
Yep, we already have Domo everywhere.
Yeah, and Mark's
specifically publish, or what version of it?
Yep, exactly. So we're publishing from a master instance to several subscriber instances. They have stock content, and then those customer users also have the ability to go and create additional content, either using our stock content kind of as their starting point, or they can all bring in their own data and build their own stuff. And it's basically like we're relicensing Domo to our customers.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Is that a revenue stream for you, or how does and I think that matters in this context.
Yeah, it is a revenue stream for us. It's a software as a service model.
Got it.
Ooh, Andrea, I love your questions, and now I have follow-up questions like, well, are you going to monetize this? This is a paid thing. How do we make? Anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment.
As far as I know, nobody's planning to monetize the community aspect of it.
Okay.
But I think sorry, I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole.
No, do the thing. Go.
Just a caveat, reward systems are important, right? This is a Charlie Munger thing. Show me the incentive and I'll tell you the behavior. So that's why I asked.
True. That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, so I just have a couple slides that I'm going to go through real quick, some ideas that I'd like to present from research that I was putting together when I was first envisioning what it would be like to run a Domo community. Yeah, just real quick. I want to pause for a moment, though, and make a differentiation between building a community versus driving the adoption of Domo. A little bit later, Scott's going to talk and speak to adoption, which is, of course, a question that's near and dear to all of our hearts. How do we get people loving and using Domo? But I think that's a little bit different from this question of how do I build a community, right? Because those of us on the call here right now, I would argue we're less concerned about driving adoption within this circle that we're speaking to, and we're more focused on how can we I don't know, create a happy place where people want to get together and hang out and exchange ideas and do stuff that's more than just, hey, I've got that weekly report I need to get a hold of. Not to say that adoption isn't important, but I do want to differentiate between the two for just a moment. And so one of the things I invite you to do is to reflect on, why are you here, other than the fantastic memes and spicy XKCD comics? You know, why did you show up today on a call where you knew we were going to be talking about community? Do you think of yourself as a community builder? And I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. That's a lie. I do think there's a right answer. But do you think of yourself as one? And have you done research around building online communities? Have you done research around, you know, what does it mean to build a community, or thought about who your users are? Again, beyond just how do I improve adoption? These stats came from, I think it was CMX 2019, which is some sort of a community building event. But they were speaking to like what some of the top frustrations are in building your online community. Top of mind, and these were multiple choice, which is why it doesn't sum up to 100, or you could choose more than one answer. But a lot of participants said it was hard to consistently engage with community members, quantify the value of a community. Yeah, I mean, those kind of really stuck out to me anyway, and of course are the top two. But, you know, even as we look at our Slack group and the engagement and participation in our Slack group versus the lurkers that are hanging around, like, if we want to grow this to, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 subscribers, whatever, like, what are the challenges there in terms of like getting people excited about your online space? And that of course applies both to when you roll out something over to your Trimble users, like what's going to incentivize them to do the thing? And, you know, Andrew was already speaking to like why or how to make that happen. It's been interesting, you know, especially reflecting over the transition from Domopalooza in person to Domopalooza online, right? As people engage in online spaces, as we stop having in-person meetups, or as we start moving back to having in-person meetups, you know, the reasons why people join communities kind of shift and change. You know, do I have these backwards? Customer support. Ooh, these might be flipped. My labels might be flipped online and in person. But like a lot of times when we see the most engagement in Slack is around people looking for support, help on getting something done. Or they are looking at, hey, how can I improve the Domo product, right? We want to talk about it online. We wouldn't necessarily go in person to kind of do the thing. So again, right now, a lot of the community building stuff we're looking at is like, how do we do that in an online space? We're not really thinking about in-person events, but I think Jason's going to speak to the variety of events and kind of ways you can engage with and build community. And I think it's just kind of interesting to evaluate, okay, how does it shift? How do my expectations, needs, and desires shift as I go from attending an online event to an in-person event? Sorry about the pixelated image, but you know, we have our 4D statement, and if I can't have a 4D statement, I might as well have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 5 community mission statement. What's your goal? What do you want to get done? And most importantly, does your audience care about what you want to get done? Do you have good alignment there, right? Like, think about some of the initiatives that we've seen at Domo, and we're like, ooh, that's really going to resonate. Or maybe, ooh, no, that's not going to resonate. But we can see what the objectives are of the people who put this thing together. And so I think it's kind of an interesting question mark. Have you aligned what you want to do with what your community wants to do? And especially Jae Wilson. Jae Wilson, have you aligned what he wants to get done with what everybody else on the planet wants to get done? And more importantly, you know, it's easy to have opinions and ideas. Again, I'm full of those. But how can we go about collecting data to reflect, again, what our community wants? And I think, Andrea, as you're asking yourself, hey, how can we do this thing in vanilla JS, or, you know, the Domo sub page, right? Is that what your community wants? Is that going to actually be valuable for them? Is there any way you could do research before you engage in that process? I don't know.
I actually just wrote that down. Survey time.
And I think there's also this question of like, why would someone, your intended audience, identify with what you're trying to offer them, right? One of the questions we asked earlier in this week that I posited to Elliot, I was like, hey, our Slack channel, we do a lot of like, hey, I've got this problem, but we don't have a lot of traction on these Friday calls. Is what we're offering actually valuable to the rest of the community? Or is this just a place for us to like hang out and talk shit about things? I don't know. I don't have answers. But one of the most intriguing things that I saw as I was going through this research about building communities, this person posited, people don't buy knowledge, they buy progress and they buy roadmaps. Like that's why they join communities. That's why we join mailing lists, is sometimes we don't actually care about what we're learning. We want to be able to demonstrate or prove that I've acquired a bit of, that I'm moving in the right direction, or I have a plan, 10 things to blah, 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 right? I have a plan or a roadmap for how to achieve something. And I think somewhere in the middle of that, you do have people like us who are just inherently curious and interested about how the world works, but maybe that is or is not representative of the population. I don't know. Just some random thoughts that kind of made me think. Cool. So I kind of already spoke to this a little bit, kind of this importance of really aligning the purpose of the community with the goals of the members. And I think as part of that, we look for this space of connection and belonging. We think of like going through some sort of transformative process, or we look at a sense of identity, right? Like the Sensei program was kind of cool because, well, one, it was already all our friends from these Friday calls, but we like had this badge that said, hey, you've done this thing and you belong to this crew and we went on this trip together and we did this cool stuff and we have matching swag. I don't know if that's necessarily important for the entire world, but as you think about, why would you want to be an MVP, or what is the difference between someone who's a, bleeds Domo blue fanatic versus somebody who's just like, it's just another job. I don't know. And a couple last thoughts to kind of close out this concept of building a community. I was talking to a snowboard instructor, because I do that on the weekends, about chasing certifications. And I was like, is chasing certifications like level 1 cert, level 2 cert, level 3 cert, is it super important? And they were like, well, I'm an academic, so yes, having certifications are great. You think about the CompTIA A+ certifications, the Microsoft certifications, like those prove to us that we've accomplished something. And earlier we talked about this idea of having a roadmap or being able to prove progress, right? Having certifications or some sort of badge of achievement. One, it's gamification. We know how much Grant loves to be the first to answer questions so he can chase his points chase his black belt. Cert chase, like that does appeal to a certain type of individual, right? And once you've done the thing, then you're part of this exclusive club. You're a black belt, right? It's a thing. But I think also on top of that, you have this idea of vetted participants. As I create a process for allowing people to prove that they know what they're talking about, then I kind of turn to them more often, right? Like there's certain YouTube channels that have a little bit more cachet when they're expressing opinions about certain platforms like Domo, because you're like, oh, this person has the certs, the credentials, the stuff that so we trust them. So that might be something, again, to think about as you're rolling out this thing. Yes, we want everyone to be part of this community, but also we want to be able to stratify who we can trust and create spaces for those people who've invested the effort to kind of come to. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'm almost done. Wait, going the wrong way. Oh, that was it. So those were kind of a couple of thoughts that I put together around like just general purpose community building. It's certainly something that I've not seen in the communities that I'm trying to build at the company that I work for. And I think that might be part of why a lot of people here just see it as, another platform, another job, as opposed to a rabid Salesforce community fanatic. But it's just kind of an opportunity, I guess, to kind of explore the things. So I wanted to stop talking for a second and invite feedback, thoughts, comments from the rest of you guys. Did you hear anything that you're like, oh, no, don't agree at all?
I think you've been completely on point the entire time. And you know, Jay, that when you and I are in alignment, anybody have any objections?
No, I'm really glad that you brought up the customers buying into it, because I know that they're into the idea of the shared community instance, but I also know that the forum idea is something that came up totally internally, and I'm not really sure that does actually add that much value for them. So very glad you said that, because I don't want to spend time building a website that nobody uses.
So just a comment / thought. I think that the inherent assumption that most organizations have is build it and they will come, right? This doesn't need to be looked at as a new product or a new job. We just have to give the space and plant a seed and it will flourish. And I think that's the wrong framing. One of the companies that I have is Smart Cycle, and it's the same thing that you're doing, Andrea. It's Domo publish, but for wrecking yard owners, right? Pull the data in, give them the analytics back. And we have very deliberately not started a community yet, because we recognize we'll basically have to hire somebody full time, and that will be their job.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
And it is a product. So I think you need, I could be wrong, but that's how we have framed it. And until we have the revenue and the, to support a full-time employee, this being their full-time job and its own product, we're just going to hold off on pulling the trigger on it. And I think if you have a misfire on a community because you're not willing to put in the level of investment, that then the assumption comes, oh, it just doesn't work. We tried it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a big swing and a miss with the early adopters that are super critical, right? If you have a swing and a miss on the first time, the second time around is that much more of a sale to get those people involved, because they already tried. They already put their blood, sweat, and tears into the first thing that nobody really built or invested in.
No. we're all kind of grinning behind our. We haven't seen that before. Elliot, what did you want to add?
Yeah, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yep. Well, we can't see your face.
I really. I'm a little sick. Sorry. So I really agreed with everything Jay said. Really loved the presentation. For me, what really resonated was that first chart you showed, Jay, was a bar chart, and the top struggle with communities was it low engagement or trying to retain people? It was something along those lines. And I feel like we've really felt that here in our Slack community, right? Where we feel the pain of, we have a lot of lurkers, very few contributors. And so that's always been top of mind for me, is how to get people really engaged and connected. Because like you said, yes, people want to get questions answered, but really this group here, we're here today because we like connecting with each other, right? We don't have crazy Domo questions. Most of us know Domo pretty well at this point, but it's really to connect with others. And so that's always been top of mind for me. And I don't have an answer there, but it really resonated.
Yeah, I think it's, it's just not that we're the top of any sort of elite pyramid, but I do suspect there's some truth to that, right? A lot of people are just here to get their job done. And I have to respect, that's the base of our pyramid. And I think there is good value in that. So swinging that back to Andrea, as you're thinking about what is the most effective way to help the base of my pyramid get answers to their questions, assuming that that's what they're here for, I would ask, do I need a private community for that? Or should I just encourage them to go to Dojo? Do I need a walled off space where I have, even fewer contributors, even fewer grantsmiths, even fewer Mark Snodgrasses who are willing to take the time to write long answers, or do I just leave that in a more open and public space and just encourage people to like not ask, questions that require private information?
Mhm.
I think that's
yeah. So just a practical rubber hits the road example of like baby stepping this. What we've started to do, Andrea, is we have set the default landing page for all of our published subscribers, and that is an announcement page. And we're starting to do hey, we encourage ideas, and then, the cool ideas that we build and push back out, we'll put the announcement in the landing page, like, hey, here's this new thing. It was Joe Bob that came up with the idea. Congratulations to Joe Bob. He had the best idea of the week. It's implemented. You can find it here, right?
Mhm.
So we're trying to like build some early traction with that. Calling people out, giving people credit, so that there's a little bit of a sense of community, if you will, from that perspective when we do eventually decide to launch. I don't know if you tried anything like that or what your experiments have looked like so far.
Yeah, we actually haven't tried anything yet, but I do like that idea a lot. And Alexis, to answer your question, so basically leadership is wanting to build our own version of the community page, so like forums, idea submission, knowledge base, all that fun stuff. But especially as we've been talking through this, I'm realizing that many of our existing sites, and this kind of goes back to why I think that specific site might be kind of a waste for us. We already have support sites. We already have beta sites where people can submit ideas. We got a lot of things that cover those already. So I'm not sure that it would add value to just be like, here, have another URL to save in your favorites and keep track of when you want to tell us something.
Yeah,
So
that's real.
instead, a landing page with links to all of those resources.
Yeah,
would
exactly.
help
Like that would be
a lot
better.
more.
For sure. But yeah, like the more we're talking about this, the more I think the actual instance still makes sense, but I'm not sure that the forum page kind of thing makes sense.
That's awesome.
The other thing we're
real
thinking
quick,
about
sorry.
there, go ahead.
To just kind of keep us on our agenda, Andrew, sorry to cut you off. Feel free to leave the question in chat or the feedback in chat, and we'll come back to it. But I want to make sure that the other folks who prepared content have an opportunity. So Jason, you're really focused on building community and not just like online communities, but it seems like you're also engaging a lot in in-person communities. And you shared with me that you had some stuff you wanted to bring to the table. So I would love to give you a couple minutes to kind of share your thoughts around how we can build community or rethink and reframe community and community interactions.
Yeah, thanks, Jay, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody today. I'm going to go ahead and start presenting. And so I've put together a deck, and I think one of the things that's been coming up that's outside of the scope of this, but I do think is important that, Jay, you called out, was thinking about this idea of like in-person versus online. It's not entirely new. We've been having to deal with this now for 3 years. Some of us have had it, even before then, but I think that's something I might work in a little bit as well. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing here. All right. You can see this?
Yes.
All right. So wanted to talk a little bit today about building a Domo community through shared events and knowledge. My name is Jason Altenburg. I work with RXA. RXA is a consulting firm based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. We provide services in Domo, Power BI, Alteryx, and all these other brands you see here at the bottom. Wanted to talk a little bit, give you an idea of who I am and my background. 2004 to 2008, I got some of those certifications that we were just talking about, A+, Network Plus, and started doing some business networking. 2008, hit the Great Recession. My career took a little bit of a change. Ended up working at a group of hotels for a while and ran the books, got to manage places. It was really nice. 2012 to 2023, worked for Lazy Boy, and I started there as a CSR. Actually, I got, excuse me, sorry. got brought in as a sort of project lead. What we were doing is they said, hey, there's this local company. They need some help automating some things. And I said, sure. They're looking for somebody with strong Excel skills. And I was like, that's right up my alley. Let's go. Ended up doing that for a couple of years. And they said, hey, we need somebody else. The engagement ended and they said, hey, we need somebody to do the phones, CSR work. I said, yeah, sure. Ended up rising through the ranks there and started working as a business analyst there, where I got introduced to business objects, Domo, etc., and ended up being in IT, where we brought in a more modern data stack with Fivetran, Snowflake, DBT. And since 2023, I've been a consultant here at RXA. When I think about community, and I think about this space and what we're doing here, and when I think about what I did at Lazy Boy, when it came to community, I always kind of follow a keep it simple, stupid, keep it simple, sailor kind of methodology, where you share your events, you share your knowledge, and that's going to build a community. It's going to build a place where people can come together and they can really kind of share that badge, that sense of identity, you know, the Sensei program or being a black belt or being a Domo champion even, those kind of things mean stuff to people. So when I think about the shared events, one of the things I had to do at Lazy Boy was to kind of take over our Domo champion program. And so as part of that, one of the things I was doing was having some regular meetings where once a month we'd get all of our champions together and do a little bit of showcase, say, hey, you know, Steve's been doing some really great work over in the account executive arena. Let's give him an opportunity to show his dashboard and talk about some of the wins that he had. We would do some open door sessions. Basically, we just book a conference room and take, I don't know, half an hour to an hour or two, depending on what we had bandwidth for the week. And either myself or one of my coworkers would sit in on that. And as a business analyst coming up at Lazy Boy, the open door sessions were one of the ways that I ended up gaining a ton of knowledge and really being more effective at my job. There were a couple gals there, Lynn and Mary, who started doing these open door sessions for business objects. So they would just open up a conference room, they'd sit there. If you had a business objects question, you could pop in. And what I was able to do there was kind of sit and hear people talking about their business questions, about what it was they were trying to do, you know, have trouble with this formula, whatever, those kind of things. And it was super helpful in realizing that I wasn't on an island. I wasn't alone in trying to answer some of these questions. And I wasn't the only one dealing with sometimes the awkward and clunky nature of certain features inside of the product. Those open door sessions ended up following through all the way right up until the pandemic. And that's when I came into the IT team and was more responsible for Domo. And what I did was I just set it up as a Teams meeting. So twice a week, open a room, a Teams room, and then we'd sit there and we'd work through the same kind of problems. Some other ideas about these kind of things in person might be doing like a dinner or a meal. And there's a guy on LinkedIn, Ethan Aaron, and take a look at him. He's doing what he calls low-key data happy hours. I thought that's also really kind of a great idea for an in-person type of an event. But meals and those kind of things can bring people together. So for shared knowledge, what we would do at Lazy Boy for workshops, typically we would do a editor session. And one of the things I found valuable about this editor session was that I would just get people together for about 2 hours, and we would take an Excel spreadsheet and go from Excel spreadsheet to working card. And even though that sounds like probably the most simple exercise inside of Domo that you could possibly do, what I found repeatedly was that people that I thought are super brilliant were showing up for these things and sitting through them as just sort of refreshers, which I thought was surprising, but also I thought was kind of cool. Panel discussions where you can get a couple folks that you know, you respect, you trust. To Jay's points about, you know, get your certified people, the people that have the credentials, or even just maybe your Domo champions inside your organization. get those folks together, have an idea that you want to walk through or talk about, and just kind of do it, podcast style, or start that discussion. Mentorship programs, we had our champions, and what I thought was great about that was it gave each of our verticals and a person that anybody inside of there that just came in to be a resource for, that was like almost an automatic mentorship program. So if I'm a brand new finance intern and I come in, I'm handed this tool, it's not a question of, who knows this tool better than anybody. Right on my landing page, I can see, oh, my Domo champion is Matt, and I can go straight to Matt and start engaging those conversations about what data do we have, what have you built, what works, what doesn't. Online forums such as the community forums are a great resource, and I've always tried to push people towards those. And for webinars or social media groups, typically for the social media groups, what I was doing was just kind of giving people a list when I onboarded them or I got them into Domo. Send a short list of, here's a couple things you might want to follow on LinkedIn. Here's some people that I think are influential. And for webinars, if I found something that I thought was going to be useful or helpful, there's the Data University, I believe it is, the Data Management Association puts on some pretty regular webinars. I'd try to share those through our Teams channels. So again, why are we doing this? Why was I doing this? Trying to build a community was because these kind of spaces are fostering, that idea of belonging, support, camaraderie, and it helps you be more productive when you're not sitting there stuck chewing on a problem, but I can go pop into a Slack channel and just kind of say, hey, here's the chart type I'm thinking about. Is this possible? Hey, I'm running into this problem with a year-over-year chart. Hey, I can't make the color of this thing change no matter what I want. And that somebody's there and they're willing to answer. I think it makes you more productive because you end up spending a lot less time in that sort of analysis paralysis, and you get more time being effective and doing things, or sometimes even being able to shelve that problem and focus on something else for a bit and wait for those answers can be helpful as well. So bringing it back, again, for me, it's always just kind of keep it simple. When you share your events with your community, when you share your knowledge with your community, that builds the community. Here's my contact information. You can add me on LinkedIn if you'd like, or send me an email. Always open to it. And I'll open it up to some questions if anybody has any. Thanks.
I really liked that we were kind of chatting about it in chat, that idea of like finding social lubricant, like to pull communities together, right? Because if you're doing tough stuff, a lot of times if you don't know something, you don't want to look stupid in front of your peers. So how can we break down those barriers? And I think somehow over time we've gotten really effective at just like having fun being dumb. And the Sensei retreat, I think, kind of helped with that. And so I'm kind of wondering for the rest of you guys who are, you have your communities, your office settings and all of that. Have you found ways to create social lubricant or whatever that doesn't necessarily involve in person or doesn't necessarily involve alcohol? I mean, especially if you're thinking about people from different companies coming together. Would love to get your thoughts about that. I see Elliot raised his hand first. Elliot, go.
Jason, thanks for the presentation. Really liked it. I think something he glossed over pretty quickly was how he basically built out a lot of Lazyboy's data infrastructure and or like Domo practice, we could say. And so, Jason, from your perspective, with a company like Lazyboy, how did you implement some of these practices into, I'm just wondering kind of if you can give some maybe anecdotal evidence, how did this result, how are the results for Lazyboy?
So I think there are two parts to that, right? There's how do we build it and how successful was it? Am I tracking correctly?
I think the second part, yeah, I think both, yes, but really the second part. Okay.
So when we talked about building our data infrastructure or building a data platform at La-Z-Boy, one of the things that I kept coming back to was that business intelligence isn't IT intelligence. So if we were going to embark on creating this thing, then we really had to have buy-in across the organization. This is not something that we're going to do as an IT project and it's going to be wildly successful and the business is just going to pick it up and adopt it. Kind of to Andrew's point, you know, you can build a garden, but you can't just expect tomatoes to magically appear after you do so, right? You got to plant the seed, you got to water it, nourish it, etc. And if you ended up building it inside of a closed garage that nobody has access to, despite your best efforts, you're still not going to get tomatoes. So I tried to make sure that we had strategy on board, that we had the business on board, that we had a whole bunch of people that were really smart and knew their respective business areas and the data inside of those, which was really easy given that I was already involved with my Domo community, right? I had my champions. I have these people who are really smart in all these different areas that know their data inside and out, and they show up to my open door sessions every week. Go ask them, you know, because you can ask me as an IT guy all day long, do I think this is a good idea? And I'll say, yeah, sure, because it, you know, it looks like it's going to be really fun and it involves the newest, greatest technology. Of course, it's going to work.
Yeah.
But then you got the people on the business side who that's not necessarily going to work for. And
Wait, sorry, Jason, before we move off of
building everybody, bringing everybody together to make sure that we were building something that we all agreed was the right solution.
before we move away to the business side of it, you mentioned data champions or like champions in general. And I guess I kind of wanted to poll everyone else. Like when you think about the champions in your organization, how do you identify them? How do you let them know that they are in fact champions and get them excited about, you know, going out there and championing? And Alexis, I see you have your hand up. We'll come back to you in just a second. But yeah.
So the way that we initially did that was we had a rollout where we brought Domo in. And the person who brought it in, TJ, it's no secret, he's on the Domo website and a number of their use cases, went out to business leaders in respective areas and basically asked, who does your reporting? And grabbed those folks and brought them all into the room, let them know that they were going to be responsible for a couple new things that, you know, and I guess the key here, TJ had executive buy-in. And when you have executive buy-in, when it's coming from the top down instead of somewhere in the organization laterally, it really lubricates that process, right? Because
so they were voluntold.
yeah, that's just it. So not only were they voluntold, but then ongoing, when we had a seat at the table, that gave us an opportunity to help make sure that the data assets that we were building were multi-purpose. Sure. And that was a huge, huge deal. Prior to that, it was an IT ticketing system, all this other stuff. You know, we kind of had to follow this really sort of almost rigid change management process in order to get any data asset built, or we didn't even know that a data asset was being built to talk about it.
Sure.
Domo sort of, I know it sounds buzzwordy, but Domo sort of democratized that whole experience. I know, throw up in your mouth for everybody. But Domo democratized it to where we all had, as the Domo champions, you know, as part of that, having that role in the organization, we had regular meetings. We all sat in the same room, you know, we shared meals together.
On that thread, Grant, you mentioned that, is Grant still here?
No.
Grant, you mentioned that you would host weekly open door sessions at companies that you've worked at where power users would kind of go and do the knowledge share thing. How did you get people excited about showing up, or were they just inherently, they were just like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want and need?
I think a lot of it was just they wanted to learn, right? I think some of them were still fairly new at things. So we used it as an avenue for training, for helping to deploy sort of best practices, things like that, really, and letting them know kind of what is going on for all of them, or kind of what was being released with Domo. And
were they younger, as in younger in their careers, younger people, or were they even just younger with newer at Domo?
Newer with Domo stuff.
Newer with Domo.
Yeah.
So there was no correlation to age or tenure?
There were, some of them were probably a little younger, but you know, there were still other people that had been there for quite a long time too. So And really it was just a matter of giving them that platform to be able to go in and learn, but really too, I encourage them to make sure to share any sort of new or cool thing that they've done.
Did you find that you had to ply them with pizza or any other kind of gimmicks, or did they just showed up because they were hungry to learn?
Well, I didn't have a budget for that stuff, so
next time.
we didn't have anything there. Yeah, so it was just free knowledge is basically what they got out of it.
And that was
well,
food
and then
enough.
value gets them coming back, right?
What was that?
Value gets them coming back.
Right. And so a lot of it was, for them to learn, but two, right, is I try to make sure to encourage them to kind of share cool things they've done, whether it's big or small, right? Because a lot of these were very sort of technical resources, designing all the dashboards and the ETLs and all that stuff, right? And so, their boss wouldn't really care less about, oh, I did this really cool thing with this ETL, right, to solve this one problem, right? Oh, hey, yeah, you got my dashboard done, right? So kind of give them a different avenue or a different platform for them to kind of share sort of the cool things that they've done through, that community of similarly minded people who would sort of find value and find, how cool something is, right? And giving them a chance to essentially be celebrated for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, nobody cares how cool your ETL is until you show people who've written ETL and they're like, oh shit, that was a great implementation. And that, yeah, but your boss doesn't care. That's interesting.
Hey, Grant.
Alexis,
Grant,
you had
called. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Jeff, I was going to say, Grant, you should have called me. I could have gotten you budget. We do Domo days, and that's similar to your working session. So had you called and said, hey, Jeff, or call your Domo rep and say, I'd like to have you come on site and do a Domo day or a Domo working session, we would love to partner.
We tried for that, but this was kind of during COVID and nothing was really happening during COVID. So
I'm just going to put your name and email, like
there you
big
go.
letters at the head, Jeff, so that everybody knows who to call to get a Domo day.
Yeah,
do it.
Well, you should 100% believe what Humble just said, that he would totally do that. That is the best sales tactic. People in here say, oh, I totally could have done that. You would have loved it.
And to your point there, Jeff, that was probably one of my favorite champions meetings I ever led, was taking my CSM up on the offer of having a TSM come out and visit on site. We had Braxton Fullenkamp out, and he
Braxton's awesome.
Demoed. Yeah, he's a brilliant dude. And so get people from Domo that are smart with Domo out to your organization. You don't need to be like the greatest at Domo ever to run these things. You have resources like, I don't know, a huge giant software company with a pretty big budget, right? So having them fly somebody out, or having them somebody local, even if, a lot of the CSMs are usually local, getting them on site or getting a TSM on site, getting somebody there that knows it, that can share it. Braxton shows up, he does a demo, he talks about like Cloud Amplifier, and he was talking about DDX bricks. Within a week, I had one of my finance interns built a DDX brick that just showed like style sales over time, and it was the racing bar chart. It got people so hyped. It was amazing. So yeah, Jeff,
Nice.
great call out.
If that's the first session that you want to have to kind of kick off those working sessions, we'll bring out a solution consultant, the rep. We'll bring in lunch sometimes. We might bring in some swag, just stuff to get people kind of excited. And then you could actually schedule your
You got
own
me
on
swag.
top of that. What's that, Jay?
I said you got me at swag. Guys, I have
Yeah.
about 10 minutes to the top of the hour, and both Mark and Scott made the time to put stuff together. I hope that one of you can go a little bit late. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to come back to you two gentlemen just a second. Alexis patiently has had her hand up. I wanted to make sure that she got a chance to share.
Thank you. It's just really quick. One thing with Jason, one thing that you were saying before, they're implementing Domo, so that's amazing. And the way that I evangelize those people that get voluntold is I say, how would you like to breathe again? Because most of them feel like they have not taken a deep breath in years, and they can take those things that they're spending hours and hours doing, you know the spiel, and that first one just makes so much difference for them, and then they get so excited. So I'm really glad that somebody implemented that. The thing I was
Yeah, it's not my idea.
True.
Solar
Yeah,
Drum
they
Go,
do.
they have a whole deck on the way that they view these structures inside of your organization. You know, get it from them, and then it makes it a lot easier to sell it.
It's exactly what I did. I met before Domo with another process that I was doing, and ended up, becoming the central resource for a whole suite of reporting. And then it just made sense with Domo, and it's a great model. And at our mutual client, Jeff, the same thing as how I sold IT on Domo. That's why there's the option in IT that there is because I told them they didn't have to put out do fire drills anymore.
Mhm.
I love that. How would you like to bring
Agreed.
it?
Yeah.
That needs to be on a t-shirt. I'm gonna pivot us real quick. I'm gonna pivot us. I know Scott's a little bit strapped for time. Scott,
raise my hand out in the chat.
oh,
No worries. When you kept talking, I had stuff.
Scott, I'm gonna go ahead and give the floor over to you. Please share with us some of your ideas. I think you were gonna go over some adoption ideas and use cases that you've had over the years.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So to say that I prepared something is incredibly generous. I wrote down a few notes. I had no idea what you had planned for this presentation. I thought it was a typical Friday call. So talking about at the start of the call, you were talking about alignment between, what your users want and what you're providing them. And I unfortunately was aligned not with you on this call. So when I heard community building in Domo, what I immediately jumped to was how do you build adoption of your users within your own Domo instance, right? During this call, I've kind of thought about, I think that there's a lot of similarities between building adoption of your user base in Domo and building adoption of a community around a Domo community, right? So I'm going to pivot a little bit around what I was going to talk about and try to meet both things. I've been a little bit of a background about myself. I work at Abbott Labs, the healthcare company. I started there as a business excellence analyst, and so I supported the sales team, sales managers, and built reports on that. More recently, I've switched teams into a product support role, so I'm helping our technical team research kind of potential issues with our products. But as a commercial rep, the biggest request that I got was when we moved to Domo was, here's this report we've been getting for years and years and years. We need this report in Domo. And so by answering those sorts of requests, we saw very low user adoption because it was a report they already had. It wasn't anything that they were excited about, and really didn't add any value to their daily routine. Where we saw adoption start to grow was when we started actually sending out, like I, as an analyst, went out with a sales rep and spent a day with them learning how they did their job, what sorts of questions they had, maybe potentially how could they use data to make their job a little bit easier. And then I also went out with a field service engineer, which is another group that we had using our Domo platform, and just saw like how they interacted with their customer, how they interacted with the tool a little bit, but mostly just what they did for their job. And out of those sorts of engagements, we kind of figured out what would bring value. What types of reporting could we put into Domo that would either make their job easier or just give them something they didn't have access to right now? And so as an example, they had access to, the field service engineers had access to every single instrument in the field, and they could go to this tool, type in the serial number, and see how it was performing. What they couldn't see was a good way of seeing all of the instruments at once, right? Where are my trouble areas? And so we built out a Domo tool that would allow them to see multiple instruments at a time, and that became quickly one of the most valuable assets we had in our Domo platform, was this tool that allowed them to do something they couldn't do in other places. And so by presenting them with that value, it increased the amount of engagement that we had in the platform. We got more feedback, we tweaked the tool, and that cycle continued. So you improve the value of your product, you get more engagement, you get more feedback, you keep improving.
You mentioned earlier. Sorry, you
Go ahead.
mentioned earlier that we were when we were prepping for this call, you talked a little bit about governance as like this way of assessing what is actually being used or what is actually useful in Domo. And you just kind of talked through this use case about how you provided engineers with reporting or tooling, fill a gap using Domo. And I guess once you design a solution for them, you know, what kind of tooling do you pull together to say, ooh, this is effective at, you know, helping people with their jobs versus this is something we might sunset or iterate on?
Yeah. So, you know, we use the Domo stats data sets to kind of monitor activity log, like how many page views we're getting, what are the most viewed pages by distinct users, what are people looking at multiple times in a day, that sort of thing. And, you know, it became very obvious once, like there were two specific reports that I'm thinking about. One was a report that allowed the service engineers to see multiple instruments. That jumped right to the top of the list really early on because we had more engineers using the platform, as well as like the amount of engineers actually logging into the platform. It was incredibly low before, and then it jumped up to like 80% of the engineers were logging in every day to look at this tool. So it was very obvious that it had value. And then the other one was a tool that we built around the COVID pandemic that allowed our sales reps to really quickly see the status of all of their customers' orders and the FedEx tracking update of like when that order is expected to arrive or has it been signed for, those sorts of things, because they were getting called daily by their customers to say, where's my order? And it took them a long time without this Domo tool to get the answers. So between those two things, like the adoption of our tool just like took off, and it became really clear that, you know, are providing value that they can't get somewhere else. That's what drives the engagement, right? And then
when you
go ahead.
So when you think about, again, you went out with your engineers, you kind of looked at how they do work, you try to figure out where that gap was, you build a solution, you monitor engagement. Great. To me, as I'm hearing you describe this, and there's nothing wrong with this, it sounds very much like you know, IT is taking ownership of providing tooling. Do you have any kind of like a pull model, or did you find anything that made it more successful to get people excited about building their own content and then sharing it with other teams in your organization? Or, you know, how do you get other people to be like citizen developers or whatever that crazy phrase is?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a good point. You know, so this was, you know, led by me, or there were maybe 5 people that were kind of driving this process. And you know, admittedly, we have like hundreds of content creators in our Domo instance. And you know, what we do is we hold the kind of monthly or quarterly calls with all of our content creators, and we review, you know, here's the top content that's being used in Domo. Here's the content that nobody's using. What can we get rid of? But it's mostly like, here's our most popular content, and let's highlight that, and let's talk to the people that created it. Like, why did you create this? How did you create this? And maybe have like an open Q&A around each of those kind of most popular pages. And I think that drives a lot of creativity. So when as a content creator, when I see something that someone else has built and kind of talk to them about how they built it or why they built it, what questions they're answering by building this, it just naturally kind of drives that sort of creativity process in your own work to say, like, okay, well, what can I do that's either similar to that, or maybe like, you know, using their same methodology about how they built it, like what can I do to either improve my products or to, you know, build something new.
I love that.
Yeah.
That pulls together like a lot of threads that we've heard throughout the day, right? Like Grant was talking about, you know, having that power users where they can showcase the work that they've done. And earlier, Andrew was talking about building a landing page with call outs and announcements. And like Jeff was offering to buy everybody pizza, is I think what I heard, pizza and swag. And like, I think that intersection of all of those 3 things is a really cool way to like get people engaged with the content that's being created, Andrea, without necessarily like building a new community forum, but we give people the opportunity to showcase, let them highlight how awesome they are, give them a chance to get some free swag so they feel part of something cool, and then maybe get a pizza and a beer out of it. Scott, thank you so much for sharing that. That actually, I'm like, oh, I need to take those notes and take them back to my office. Mark, I know it's the top of the hour. Thank you so much for sticking around. Did you have any things and thoughts that you wanted to kind of share?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of overlap from what Jason and Scott and Grant mentioned in the chat from what I have. I'm going to share my screen since I did just make a PowerPoint. Might as well make use of it.
You can also be the wrap up that brings us home.
Yeah, but I was encouraged to hear kind of the overlap because then maybe it's like, hey, I'm not out in left field on things that I've been doing. So let me. Where can I see? I'm a little new to the whole Google Meet thing. So can we resume slideshow? Are you guys seeing the slide?
Oh man, look at that YouTube handle. Yes.
You like that? Yeah, we got the handle going.
I love it.
Okay. Yep. So please go there. And as our favorite director of community likes to say, smash that like and subscribe button. I really don't care, but there's no way I'm going to be monetizing on YouTube, but it's fun to do and enjoy seeing people liking it and whatnot. And it's what I've used to help kind of grow the adoption here because I create those for our members. Maybe real quick before I get into the 4 points, just for those that don't know, my situation is maybe a little bit like Andrea's in that I work for a company called NLC Mutual, and we are a member-owned organization, and essentially we've got a member from 26 out of the 50 states that purchase insurance coverage from us, like property or liability or workers' comp, and then those individual states, they insure the cities and counties within their state. So they come to us for higher levels of insurance. So think like Hurricane Ian, we insure Florida for a part of their property coverage. So when you get a big claim like that, then they come to us for that coverage, and we handle the claims and give them money back for that. And we are purchasing Domo for each of those 20 some members on our dime. We're not trying to monetize that. We're trying to make it a sticky membership for them, so they enjoy purchasing coverage, more reason for them to purchase coverage with us, and also help them, get better insight into their claims and all their business operations, so that maybe they can reduce costs on their claims, which then doesn't hit us, so that helps us in turn. But so I'm using Domo Publish to push data out into their instances. I also use Dataset Copy to get data from their instances up to ours to aggregate that and build those cards. But then we want them to each make use of our investment into Domo. So kind of going with that, one thing I do is to host show and tell meetings every other month. There's about like 70 or 80 folks on the attendee list, and it's kind of at this point more webinar style, but I will kind of go over some new things that Domo released, highlight something cool that I've done for one of the members, because then they don't compete against each other. So it's like, hey, we built this dashboard for Oregon, and then when I next then Minnesota will raise a hand and say, hey, can you build that for us as well? So I'll do that. So I think that's kind of what some of the Jason had done as well. But that's been pretty effective in kind of keeping momentum going, get people interested in seeing what is possible in there. And then at a smaller level, next thing we do is we meet regularly with groups. So we'll meet monthly with each state. And if you're like in a large organization, you consider that like meet individually with each department. Maybe you meet with accounting each month and meet with someone else another month, and those are a little more focused. And I often start with, hey, what are you working on right now? How can I help you? what are you struggling with in Domo that I can help you get over whatever barrier that is. I do a lot of asking and trying to draw things out from them. Say, hey, what are your goals for this year? What have been your biggest pain points? And that kind of gets them thinking about things, because a lot of times they're just very routine oriented. It's like, well, I've been generating this Excel sheet for the last 20 years. That's what I'm doing. It's like, okay, let's try and do a little more than that, and see what we can do and try and help you move forward on things. So it's a lot of focus training. So if they don't have something, then I will, just work through, here's how we do something in Magic ETL. Here's how we expand this line and bar chart, and just kind of train the trainer type situation so that they feel a little more enabled and a little less intimidated. I think for some of them, when they first get Domo, when they think it's really cool, the pretty visualizations, but then they open up Analyzer and I think they're a little intimidated seeing all the properties and all these different things, like, well, I don't know what to do. So try and break that down a little bit by showing them, hey, let's just walk through, drag and drop, here we go, and build something out for them. And then next thing is kind of my attitude is be a learner. And I think a couple people touched on this. One, for me, it helped me to get involved in the community forum, formerly the dojo, and the Slack channel, and see what other people do. And that exposed me to things in Domo I didn't know were there. And it's like, oh, I did not know we could do that with that chart. Oh, I did not know you could do that in Magic ETL. So that exposed me to some new things. So then I could go try out and then share that back with the group. So kind of having that mindset yourself. And then internally, I think someone touched on this as well, learning about the business. So rather than just, hey, I have this function and I'm going to do this, let me go sit in with claims and learn how claims handles things. And if I can understand what their day-to-day operations are like, then I could better build things for them and give them some new insights and maybe offer some efficiencies for them. It's like, hey, did you know I could build this and automate this in Domo for you and save you, 2 days out of every month for yourself? And that has helped folks, because I think that's been a big thing. It's like, hey, especially for those analysts where, they're doing maybe the same thing every single month. It's like, hey, let's try and grow that adoption by eliminating some tedious work that you guys are doing, and let's develop some wins with that. So that's been something I've kind of long done over my career, is learning not just in IT, but learning what all the other departments are doing. Can I more or less sit in on that job for a day and do something and get me proficient in that, and that helps me then understand what their needs are. Then finally, adopt Ben Shine's old job title.
Love that.
Data curiosity. I think that's the best job title there's out there. I think it helps everybody if you can see what you can do with the data. So again, rather than just churning out a request, look at that data, see what else you can do with it, see what you can come up with, and then show, somebody in that department, say, hey, I created this out of this. Is this accurate? 2, would this be benefit? Have you ever thought about looking at it this way from this angle, and see what you can do? And then there's certainly a lot of public data sets out there. Bring those in to your instance and see how that could help you. And I was recently exposed to the FBI has a crime database publicly available. I was like, well, let me bring that in and see what trends are going on in there that might impact what liability claims and property claims that we're seeing. So there's tons out there that are worth looking at. But those are kind of the main things I thought might be helpful. That's kind of what's been working for me, I guess. And so I'm happy to take any other questions or feedback on any of that.
Yeah, quick question for the group. When you think about encouraging or inspiring people to become learners, right? Like, again, if my job is not Domo, a lot of times I'm just focused on, okay, get this report out the door, or build this marketing dashboard, or answer the analytics question I'm supposed to answer. But how do we get people excited about learning for learning's sake? I wish Elliot was still here, because I think he really exemplifies just being a curious mind. But do you guys have any ideas around that? Like either you have it or you don't.
Yeah, I got something. This goes back to me trying to figure out what the heck a business analyst does, right? I get hired in. You're a business analyst now, Jason. That's great. I'm so excited. I'm so happy. Oh no, what does a business analyst do? So I went and found that there's an organization called the International Institute of Business Analysis. And I ended up going to one of their chapter meetings, and I asked a lady from Ford, I said, I suck at documentation. I'm so bad at it. How do I make sure that, as part of the process that documentation happens? And she looked at me, she said, put it on the calendar. If it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So my thought around that is take 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what your bandwidth is, every week, and think about something that you saw that you thought was cool. And maybe you thought, I can do that too, right? Right now, everybody's all about ChatGPT and all that stuff. And maybe you've never connected to an API. Maybe you've never tried to develop an app. Take 30 minutes and see how far you can get, because often it's just having that time set out to start on that journey is the big challenger. And then at the end of the 30 minutes, at the end of the hour, cut it off and go back to business as usual.
Oh my God.
That's what I try to do.
I love that you brought that up, because I think back to when I was getting started on like trying to teach myself coding or teach myself Python. It would actually take 30 minutes just to install the damn software. And on a weekend, if you're stuck on like, what is this effing error message? You're just like, I'm out. And I think one of the biggest accelerators for like, not to do a plug for Domo, but one of the biggest accelerators for like just being able to experiment freely was having a platform that has Domo Jupyter Workspaces, a platform that has ETL tooling. So if you know ETL, do it. If you don't know ETL, that's okay. A platform that has your connector framework, so I can just pull in Twitter data without having to write an API request. I sound a little bit salesy and I'm preaching to the converted, but Jason, I love that you just like 30 minutes on the calendar. And it just triggered me how many 30 minutes I wasted just fucking trying to get software installed, which I don't have to deal with anymore. Jeff, that can be a soundbite for you.
Market has 30 minutes of being the VP of data curiosity.
Right. Love that. It's so good, Mark.
Hey, Jason, when you talk about documentation, I think a lot of times, and hopefully I'm on the right track here, I just find I don't have time, right? Stuff's going on during the day and I get sidetracked. So I recently put an Alexa in my office, so I can just talk to Alexa as my personal assistant and say, put this on my to-do list, so that I don't, because I get caught up in so many different calls and I forget stuff that one client may have asked me to follow up on. So you may try something like that for the documentation, just be able to throw it in there and come back to it later.
Love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
what about the rest of you guys?
You're sitting right in front of an amazing piece of technology every day, right? I mean, Windows tried to do it with Cortana there for a minute, but yeah, sometimes having that separate device, something you can look at and say, okay, make this mental note for me, really helps.
What about the rest of you guys? Anything else that comes to mind in terms of inspiring people to seek out education, but I think more importantly, will help as we think about bringing this back to Andrea and her desire to like build a community? What are some core things that we need to like have top of mind? Everybody gets one. Everybody think for 30 seconds. You have one thing you're going to say. This is going to be the soundbite for the beginning of the video, by the way. So no pressure. You're here. I did all the work beforehand, so y'all get to. So
Okay,
again,
say the question again.
The question is, what is one thing that we should be thinking about as we're trying to like build or inspire together a community? And it can be one thing that drives adoption that you should be aware of. So you get one more minute to think. You get to speak for no more than 30 seconds, because again, we want this to be a pretty fast soundbite. Ready? I'll let you think some more so that nobody has confused faces.
Maybe you want to go first, Jay?
No, I put the whole deck together. I'm out.
I'll go first for you.
Oh, you got it? Yeah. Can you turn on your camera?
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah.
I like seeing faces.
Let me get my...
Perfect.
So, the first thing that I think on community, after our call last week, I jumped on Domo Central and I was just reading through stuff. And Jay, I saw you responding to people all the time, which I thought was awesome. And then I saw some questions in there and somebody would get involved and then they would leave somebody hanging. And for me, that's the quickest way to drop me out of a community, because like, okay, I put a question in. It's like texting, you know, we all have that one friend that you text and they wait a week to respond. It's like, okay, I just can't text with you. That's just a tough relationship. So for me, that's the important part of a community. Is
Making
that
sure
there's-
people get responses.
Yep.
Love that. Alexis, what about you? What do you think is the most important thing?
Relationships in a caring environment.
What do you mean by that?
Ooh, see, I was trying to be really
I love,
good.
yeah. You understood the assignment. You were like, no more than 30 seconds, so you cut it down to 2.
I'm an overachiever. You know, for example, in the dojo,
Can you
in the
start over
early
again
dojo,
with the lead with
go ahead.
relationships in a caring environment, and then go into the thing?
The old dojo, you would feel like people cared about making sure that you had the solution and that you accomplished what you were looking to do. And in our group that we've been meeting on Fridays, like, we care about each other, we know about each other's lives, and any one of us would be there for each other in a pinch. You know, those things, it really makes the sticky environment, I think, actually giving a crap about the other humans that are in the group or forum, etc.
So making sure that people in the community know that we're here for you. We want to support you in all of the things.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm just
It's
going around the.
not just a ladder going up the chain in your job, but that we actually care about progressing together.
Cool. I'm just going through the list of people who've spoken the least. So Juliana, I think you're up next.
Well, all right. You guys have taken a couple, like, I wrote down some just little words. Relationships, Alexis said. Improving, I meant that in like personal improvement or improving efficiencies. Oh, Alexa's thinking I'm talking to her now, sorry. She starts talking to my ear. Saving time, like encouraging, basically improving the community by helping people understand that by being a part of the community, we can help them save time in their own reporting through
Right.
automation. Just general networking. I mean, that's kind of why I started joining, especially now that I don't work for an agency anymore. It's really important for me to like network with other Domo users. That goes back to the learning. Like, I learn from all of you guys. I never want to be the smartest person in the room, and you guys are all smarter than me. So, and help me grow, which was the last one I wrote, was growing. So sorry, I probably just took like a bunch of everybody else's, but those were the bullets that I wrote down.
Oh, that was great. Love that. Mark, what about you? Most important thing when you're putting together a community?
I think have a space where they can share their successes. I think they can, those in turn, then give ideas to other people, and then they can either replicate that or it spawns a new idea. And I think that's it kind of encourages that growth and together.
Jason, what about you?
Take the lead and don't be afraid to raise your hand to speak up. I think that you should, embrace vulnerability, share your thoughts and experiences. We're not alone on this journey. Together we can grow and learn from one another, and we're not on an island. And I think that's what I've found as I've been willing to open up and share some of the challenges that I'm experiencing in my job.
Love that.
And thank you all for being there.
Scott, are you still around? He might have had to duck out, which leaves Andrea. What would you say is the most important thing that you picked up today? New question. Just a monkey
for
wrench.
me, it's definitely meeting them where they are, meeting our customers where they are, and then giving them what they want and not what we have decided that they want.
Oh, I love that.
Because I had not really focused on the fact that that's what we had decided for half of our community was we decided that you want this. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is meeting them where they are and making sure that whatever we deliver is actually what they want and not just what we think they want.
Love that. Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining. For my presenters, thank you for taking the time to put your thoughts together and come and present. Yeah, I really enjoyed this format. I hope you guys thought it was useful and worthwhile. For myself, and Brian's no longer here, but I think I'll try to do this run a session like this once a month. So I am looking for your questions. Andrea, if you have more questions where you're just like, how could we do XYZ? Like, we've got a ton of smart people in the room. We'd love to come together and brainstorm with you. So like, don't be shy with these like big, hairy, weird questions.
Those are my favorite kind of questions.
Love that. Love that.
Thank you, Jay, for doing this.
Yes, I really appreciate it.
It's
My
great
pleasure.
that it's a general topic.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
sort of problems we all have to solve.
Yeah. Let's do it again next month.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
You guys
All right,
have
guys.
a great weekend.
Catch
Thanks,
you later.
everyone.
Bye.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Bye.